The need to set up some rules and laws must have come as soon as we started forming any type of groups and societies. For centuries, people have been tasked with protecting these rules and keeping society functioning.
Yeah, you have to get out of the house. This is very trouble.
Sir, back up.
Back of what?
If we fast forward to more recent times, we recognize that many work on this even today. Police officers often find themselves at the front lines of various events and facing people who are trying to skew the law.
You don't gotta be turned. Help me. Help me.
And act however they feel. Today, we examine how seriously cops take their jobs and examine a list of videos that explain why you shouldn't try to fight cops. Number 1. Man attacks cops at the zoo. To kick us off, we go to Florida. The period is May of 2022, and this story starts as the officers get a report that there is a man acting quite aggressively at a local zoo. Besides attempting to enter the zoo without paying, this person was allegedly harassing both employees and visitors. Responding to this call, cops show up and quickly try to understand what's going on. As they meet an employee of the zoo, they get a clearer picture. The case seems to include a deranged Pafutageson, truly showing worrisome signs of aggression. Even from the employee's reaction, we can realize the gravity of the situation since he immediately says that help is needed and that the man is extremely violent. As they walked to where the person was and the staff member led them through the zoo, the cops wasted no time and immediately started asking questions to better understand the situation. In this way, they learned how to identify him through his clothing. Once they got this, we saw them picking up the pace and looking for him based on the description they just got. As we can see another staff member, we realized that the zoo employees' communication seemed quite good. They have spread themselves across the area and tried to monitor the situation without putting themselves in danger's way. This next worker that the police officers have met points them directly towards the aggressor and lets them know that he was physically attacking people. Hearing this, cops immediately started running, probably thinking to themselves, what if we don't arrive in time to prevent a disaster? Luckily, this isn't how it turned out. As soon as they neared him, they got all the evidence they needed to detain the perpetrator. The man was physically abusing a woman, and the first glimpse that we get of him, we see him pushing her mercilessly on the ground. With no further confirmation needed, cops go straight into action, doing their best to subdue the man. As we see, he didn't plan to go down as quickly. Besides keeping up the struggle and trying to get away from the cops' grips, the man keeps screaming and ignoring their appeals to stop. Even though there were 2 officers on him, he stayed ferocious, pushing them aside, even managing to reach for the officer's gun and taser. Since he pulled this off, he even got them tangled in the wires and, for a brief moment, tased. But the cop realized what was happening and immediately removed herself from the situation to avoid further danger. Her colleagues, however, don't linger and manage to subdue the man, pinning him down to the ground. As if this whole situation wasn't already weird enough, the man claimed that one of the workers at the zoo was his wife, which they found out later wasn't true at all. In his maddened rage, he kept repeating the question, "Where is his wife?" Keeping him pinned in his delusions, the officers requested another unit to make sure this riled-up suspect didn't cause more damage. As one of the de-escalation tactics, speaking to the subject and even connecting to him by using his name is often advised. As this tactic failed here, the team realized they were left with nothing but to restrain the man. Later, we find out that he managed to severely deliver serious kicks to one of the police officers who tackled him. Considering the maniacal behavior this man showed, it's no surprise that even placing cuffs on him took a while. After successfully restraining him, he was provided medical attention to make sure that he was well before he was escorted to the police station. Once the smoke had cleared and the perpetrator was successfully subdued, the investigation returned with the results showing there were drugs in this man's system, causing his delusional behavior. Among the charges brought up against him were battery, resisting arrest, trespassing, and even assaulting a police officer. Number 2, man attacks cops with a saw. If somebody has missed the title of this list, it's why you shouldn't try to fight cops. In this previous example, we realized that it often follows a charge of assaulting a police officer. This next video shows another man who thought he could try and fight his way out of the law's grip. 2022 seems to have been quite a busy year for police officers. This case happened in Wisconsin and began as a call about an ongoing domestic disturbance in a neighborhood. Officers went to the scene to try to understand what was happening and got the cliff notes from two women they found in front of the house. After the wife has returned home from work, she has a falling out with her husband, who seems to have been drunk and caused quite a scene. The uproar seems to have been so loud and problematic that the neighbors decided to jump in and try to offer help. Some even tried to take the woman and the child away from the man who was showing this dangerous behavior. As these women were nearing the house, the wife, who was receiving all these loud and aggressive screams, ran out to warn them to get away as he was about to drive off. At this moment, the officers realized that this man was probably even driving in his drunken state. As the police started talking to the wife, their interview was cut short by the suspect pulling over in front of his house. As soon as he opened the car doors, the first words out of his mouth were aimed at the ladies, asking them whether it was truly necessary to call the cops. Staying calm and trying to manage the situation, the police officer approaches the man and tries to strike up a conversation as politely as one could do in this situation. However, his attempts to talk politely seem to be refused quite quickly, as the man says he isn't open to talking to the police and starts cursing right away for them to leave. Staying rude, the man walks into his house. He throws a woman and a child out, and as the situation progresses, he keeps cursing at the cops and chasing them away from his property, still politely asking him to calm down. The police officers tell him that they are not in his house and that they are not in any violation by standing there. Insisting that he should calm down, the police officers keep trying to communicate with the man, who even walks out to chase them away, waving his hands around. Keeping a cool head and an undisturbed manner, one of the cops tells his colleague to keep watching the man just to ensure that everything will go smoothly. He returns to the woman to try and understand the situation better. It seems that the perpetrator was watching the kids as the wife was working on her part-time job, and through messages, she claims to have realized that he must have been drunk, adding that he is a known alcoholic. Seeing as they're talking to his wife, the man again rushes towards the officer, trying to chase him away from the property. As he keeps screaming and pointing his hands towards the cop, he is repeatedly asked to calm down and stop. Since he refuses to do so, he is warned that they may have to detain him if he doesn't take the situation more seriously. This doesn't stop him, and he keeps both cursing and threatening his wife, even right in front of the cops. Since there is no other way out, the cops are about to assist the woman, ensuring her safety as she picks up her stuff from the house before they leave. This triggers the man even further. Things seem to start escalating quickly when the man starts screaming at his wife's sister, asking whether she is going to be taking care of his wife, going as far as to curse at her. The cop intervenes and asks him to stop this, to which the man replies by getting up in his face. After a short struggle, he goes to his backyard, where we see a garage. As he is walking, he claims that he has a weapon and keeps cursing at the cops. He pulls out a saw from his garage, and the cop immediately reacts by pulling out his taser. For safety reasons, the other cop has, just in case, pulled out his gun. Asking the man to put the weapon down, he luckily agrees and throws the saw away. However, we must know that such behavior can't be tolerated, and he gets caught and detained. Still cursing as they are doing it, the cops put cuffs on him and take him away. Throughout the video, we can recognize the charges that follow this case, which include disorderly conduct and threats aimed at a cop or law enforcement officer. Number 3, man refuses to go calmly and has to be tackled. In the two previous examples that we have seen, we could have been aware that there would be trouble right from the get-go. This next video shows a somewhat different dynamic, kicking off quite worrisomely, moving on to a calming period, and finally escalating in another lesson that spells you shouldn't make an attempt to fight cops. In November of 2021, there was a call to the police describing that a fight had broken out between a man and a woman in a local bar. Answering this call, the police officers went to inspect the scene and understand what was happening. As soon as they got there, they noticed a man standing in front of the bar and holding a knife. Imagine what kind of nerves one needs when his job is to stay calm, while striking up a conversation with such a man. In an attempt to not make this into a dangerous scene instantly, police officers tried to calm the man down, approaching him in a peaceful manner and trying to get him to drop the blade. Even through these attempts, we can see that the man is very disturbed. While his claims were that he would give the cops the knife, his body language was telling a different, more violent story. After being told to put it down, he refuses and throws it in front of the cop's legs. Even as he does this, he keeps yelling and threatening the safety of the woman with whom he was in a fight. The threats continued, even as the man took a seat in front of the bar. Officers attempt to have a conversation with him, understand his side of the story, and most importantly, keep things under control. The man's temper, though, doesn't seem to allow this. Even though the officers approach the conversation calmly, it takes just a few brief moments for the man to start lashing out at the police officer. Even the words that he is using are quite rude, as he curses and calls the woman he was in a fight with various inappropriate names. After babbling out many profanities and threatening the woman's life, he attempts to simply stand up and walk away from the situation. This naturally didn't sit well with the cops, who had to put a stop to the development of a potentially dangerous situation. Still staying polite, the cops ask him not to leave the conversation without insinuating that his freedom isn't his own due to his actions. While he does get back briefly, he then crosses the street, getting away from the cops at a slow but steady pace. Even though he was made aware of his situation, he wasn't willing to go calmly. After trying everything they could, the police officers realized that there was no other way but to detain this potentially dangerous man by force if necessary. As they make this known and approach the man, officers pull out their tasers to show the seriousness of the situation. The man, however, doesn't seem to respond to this well at all and doesn't acknowledge how faulty his behavior and actions have been. He keeps punching himself in the chest and takes off his shirt as a way of protest, threatening the police officers at the scene. Seeking for the right opportunity to avoid the fight as best they could, police officers found one and took it swiftly. As the man was talking, one of the officers tackled him and threw him into the nearby bush, where they all ran to assist him and subdue the man. After a brief struggle, they managed to pin him down and put the situation under control. Even though this must have been a rude awakening, the man keeps his impolite way of speaking with the cops, claiming he is drunk and taunting the officers. He goes as far as to threaten to purchase a firearm and take his revenge on the officers who are arresting him. After making sure his health wasn't threatened, the man was taken to jail and charges were pressed for reckless endangering, attacking a law enforcement officer, and resisting arrest. Number 4. A man tries to grab the cop's taser. All the previous examples started with a call to the police. To switch things up a bit, let's see whether different types of encounters can also show us how bad of an idea attacking a cop is. In April of 2024, near midnight, police officers pulled over a car and asked for ID. As they received false ID and the man was acting quite suspiciously, cops decided to look into this case and understand it completely. As it turns out, their suspicions were spot on. Striking up a conversation with the man in a car, the cops start by outright explaining to the man that he has to look into what's going on as everything seems too schemy, and asks for his cooperation. Using his flashlight to look through the car, he tries to see if there are any worrisome materials or even a concealed weapon that he can recognize. Staying on his toes, the cops keep explaining to the man what they can and cannot do. And one of the things that they need is to correctly identify the person in the car. They ask them all to leave the car as they notice this wasn't leading anywhere. The woman does so obediently, and after being warned not to reach for her pockets, she stands aside. The man, however, doesn't seem to listen to these instructions and keeps suspiciously reaching around the car. As this is usually quite a worrisome sign, the cop reacts instantly, grabbing his hand and rendering him unable to pull out whatever he was reaching for. Later, it turned out that he had a knife in his pocket. As the man is exiting the car, he, for a second, acts as if he is about to go calmly, but this isn't the case at all. He saw this as an opportunity to reach for the officer's taser and immediately regretted it. In an attempt to grab hold of the police officer's taser, he made it necessary for the cops to subdue him and put him under control. Quick reaction from officers certainly achieves this as they grab the man, pushing him towards the back of the car where they intended to restrain him. As the man doesn't give in but keeps fighting, police officers are made to use the necessary force to subdue the man who assaulted them. They successfully put him under control and cuff him, reaching a less disastrous outcome than this could have been. His actions have put this man in jail, adding the charge of aggravated assault on a police officer. Number 5. Busted at a college campus. Going through this list of people who have shown us that nothing good can come from fighting cops, we move on to a college campus where a man is reported refusing to leave the campus after making a commotion and even briefly confronting security officers. Even though they got the man out of the door, he decided to stay at a nearby bus stop. Police officers were dispatched and went to see what was going on. As they met with the young man, he briefly explained what was going on. He gave them a story of his actions being actually heroic as he stepped in to retrieve his girlfriend's pepper spray, which was taken as it isn't allowed on campus. While they were talking to him, police officers also got information that he is known for causing trouble, even from previous incidents. Cameras would later show that the young man has started a fight and, after claiming that he couldn't breathe, was released by the security guards. Once asked by the police, he reversed this story into seeming like a victim. Everything that we have said up until now could have been a sign to the cops that this man may be a troublemaker. As soon as they ask him for his name, they realize that this indeed may be the case. Even though the cops were polite and talked to his girlfriend very calmly, when asked to ID himself, the man refused. It took some time before the cops had the whole story around this incident figured out. During this time, they talked to the man, and he even admitted that he indeed punched the two men who called the cops, although he explained it was in self-defense. Nevertheless, to proceed in this case, cops had to take him to the station, which he refused and threatened to run and fight cops if they tried to take him. Things started to turn sour once he noticed that backup was getting near. At that moment, he starts slowly walking away from the officers, which they recognize as him trying to run away. As they attempt to stop him, we see the man pushing against officers and refusing to cooperate. As he gets pinned down, we see him still screaming at the cops and cursing at them. Even though he was kicking and pushing, he attempted to use the same story he gave to the security guard, saying that he was having a panic attack and couldn't breathe. This didn't stop the police officers. However, considering his protests, the police did have to offer medical support, which soon arrived. Even as he got up on the medical cart, he left his leg hanging as if he were ready to run. However, experienced officers didn't allow this to happen. The young man was restrained and prosecuted. These charges included not just battery, but also threats to officers, as well as obstructing officers' duty. Number 6. Drunk man insists he can drive when confronted by cops. In the previous example, the guy who messed with the police could have been drunk on love. In this next one, we see a man who is drunk on real alcohol and insists that he can drive. In 2022, police officers walked up to a scene where a bar owner and a guy who seemed to have had one too many were standing in front. They politely asked questions to understand the situation and unravel what was happening. At this moment, they had no suspicion that this could turn into a bigger problem than it should be. Even though he claims that he has had at least 3 drinks, this man firmly tells the cops that he is indeed capable of driving and that it is no issue at all. Staying calm and not making the situation into something worse than it is, the police officers offer the man to drive him home if necessary to avoid him driving in an intoxicated state. However, he firmly refuses, claiming he is capable of doing so himself. Even as he fails to talk clearly, he keeps insisting that he is indeed capable of driving and getting himself home. At that point, he starts getting in one of the officers' faces and pointing fingers at them aggressively. When they asked him for his license, he said indeed he had it, but he refused to give it to the cops, sticking with his original idea of driving home drunk. As they realized that this guy might cause trouble, one of the officers nicely asked the man to take his hands out of his pockets. This is usually a good idea since you never know what could be inside them. As the conversation progresses, the man gets more domineering. He gets too close to one of the cops and gets warned to step back. After he tells them that he is going back to drinking even more, the police officers show that they aren't going to stop him, but they can't let him drive. As time goes by, his alcohol courage seems to become more evident through his constant exploration of the cops' personal spaces, which he keeps breaching even though warnings are given. Even when he agrees to give the cops his license, he gives them a Visa card instead, further confirming how intoxicated he is and certainly incapable of driving. Even though things seemed calm and the conversation was moving along, unprovoked and unpredictable, the guy slaps one of the officers. As this behavior is unacceptable, he gets pinned down immediately and they put cuffs on him. However, cops still didn't see the end of it. Once they got him back to the station, he kept being uncontrollable and cursing heavily. This earned him the charges of resisting arrest, and his previous move added aggravated assault to it. We have seen many instances where people thought that trying to fight cops may not be as bad an idea as even our common sense could tell us. Just in case there's anyone who hasn't gotten the message through all the examples we have shown, please do not attempt to fight cops. If you, by chance, didn't get this message, you should try going back and re-watching this list before you realize that this is never a good move.